an accent. And you can maybe fake a past life.
But you can't fake the exact location of a 3,000-year-old hidden underground tunnel when there are zero historical records of it. But somehow, Dorothy Eady knew exactly where to dig. In 1904, a 3-year-old girl named Dorothy Eady fell down a flight of stairs at her home in Blackheath. The doctor declared her deceased. An hour later, she woke up. Sitting up in bed, she started speaking in a strange accent, begging her parents to take her home, even though she already was. Her parents didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of a lifelong journey fueled by one unshakable belief. She was an ancient Egyptian priestess. After Dorothy's accident, along with her change in personality, she started describing things that were totally unfamiliar to her parents and would wake up sobbing, insisting she needed to return to this unknown place she considered home. In these dreams, or visions, Dorothy told her parents she would see gardens filled with exotic plants and flowering trees, buildings that were unlike anything you'd see in England at the time. She would describe their stonework, carvings, and intricate designs with such detail, it was like she was looking right at them. She could describe the hallways and chambers as though she walked through them herself. And she even recounted rituals she'd observed. But what her parents and those around her noticed with these stories was how consistent they were. She would describe the same scene time and time again, not the usual babble of a child telling stories. This would all come to a head after a family trip to the British Museum. As soon as the family entered the Egyptian exhibit, Dorothy's shift in personality suddenly clicked. She began running through the halls, kissing the feet of statues, and declaring these were her people. She fixated on a photo of the Temple of Seti I at Abydos, crying out that it was her home. Except she was confused why the roof was missing. Her parents tried to calm her, but she was too overwhelmed with emotion. And even though this was her first exposure to Egyptology, there were artifacts she recognized and could identify accurately. At one point, she approached a statue and named the figure accurately. Her parents and even the museum staff were shocked. How could such a young child know these things? Could this be an actual case of reincarnation or an incredibly hyperactive imagination? When Dorothy was 10 years old, her impressive knowledge of Egyptology caught the attention of the famous English archaeologist, Sir E.A. Wallace Budge. He volunteered to teach Dorothy hieroglyphics and was amazed by how quickly she was catching on. When he asked her about it, she told him that she wasn't learning. She was only remembering what she had learned before. Even as years passed, she still insists, even to Sir Budge, that in a past life, she was part of Pharaoh Seti I's court. She goes on to tell him that she has dreams about Seti I, saying that he would come to her through her dreams, begging her to return home. In 1927, Dorothy and her family moved to London. She joined an art school with a specialty in ancient art. It was during this time she became acquainted with a young Egyptian man named Iman Abdul Majid, who was also studying there. 4 years later, the two were married, which allowed her to move to Majid's homeland, Cairo, Egypt. The story goes that as soon as she set foot on Egyptian soil, she fell to her knees, kissed the ground, and declared she had finally returned home. The couple had one child, a son they named Seti. Following the local custom of referring to women as the mother of their eldest son, she became known as Seti, which translates to Mother of Seti. Unfortunately, the marriage didn't last long. She cared much more about ancient Egypt than her husband did, and her hours of automatic writing a technique where a person writes without consciously controlling what they're putting on the page, didn't help the relationship either. But tapping the spirit world allegedly helped Seti connect to her past life. In her unfinished autobiography, she described dreams where she was visited by the god Hera, who told her that she was once an Egyptian girl named Bentrashite, living during the reign of Seti I, around 1290 to 1279 BC. After the death of the girl's mother, her father could no longer care for her, so he gave her to the temple of Abydos to become a priestess. Then, she writes, she met and fell in love with Seti I. She was 14 at the time, and the pharaoh, notably older. Bentrashite ended up breaking her vows of celibacy for a passionate and forbidden affair with the pharaoh Seti I, an affair that resulted in a pregnancy. According to her writings, she ended her life to protect his reputation. Thousands of years later, in 1935, Dorothy found her modern life falling apart as well. Her husband was offered a teaching position in Iraq, but Dorothy refused to leave Egypt, so their marriage ended. Dorothy moved to live near the pyramids of Giza, where she dedicated her time to drawing, recording, writing, and performing rituals by the Great Pyramids. Her knowledge of ancient Egypt caught the attention of well-known archaeologist Dr. Salim Hassan. He ended up hiring her as his secretary and draftswoman, making her the first woman to work for Egypt's Antiquities Department. After her work finished with Dr. Hassan's team, she went on to work for the archaeologist Dr. Ahmed Fakhri. In 1956, she made the move to Abydos, the site of her past life. Still, even though she played a crucial role and held a respected position in Egyptology, her claims of being a reincarnated priestess weren't exactly met with acceptance by her academic peers. But during her working years out in the field, there were some coincidences that even the strictest skeptics found hard to ignore. Her understanding of hieroglyphics was extensive. Despite never being formally trained beyond the tutoring she received as a child, her colleagues reported she was able to read and translate ancient texts with an accuracy that rivaled even trained professionals, often interpreting obscure symbols and inscriptions that stumped experienced Egyptologists. Then there was the legend of the Temple Garden. This was Seti's chance to prove to the inspectors she worked alongside that she was, in fact, a reincarnated priestess. Accounts say she pointed to this area where the men weren't digging. She told them in her past life she remembered this area being a lush garden. At first, there was skepticism among the archaeologists. There were no records or previous excavations to ever suggest the presence of such a thing. However, they decided to excavate anyway. And to everyone's astonishment, evidence of a garden was reportedly found, complete with traces of ancient plants and structures for irrigation. But that wasn't all. Seti went on to direct teams to hidden architectural features within the temple of Seti I. She spoke of secret passages and tunnels located beneath the temple, used during religious ceremonies in ancient times. These tunnels had been long forgotten, and there were no historical records to show they ever existed. No one else knew they were there, but according to the excavation teams, she did. She frequently advised archaeologists on where to excavate, pointing out specific areas around the ruins. Reports from her colleagues suggest her predictions were often correct. When excavations revealed exactly what she told them would be there, her awareness of the site was so accurate that despite skepticism on how she knew it, many archaeologists came to rely on her while planning out their excavations. Seti lived in Abydos until her death in 1981 at the age of 77. She was considered a master of hieroglyphics, She explored and discovered lost ruins. Her hands touched artifacts that hadn't been held for over a millennia. While her claims of being an ancient Egyptian priestess will likely never be verified, it's hard to ignore the accounts of her pointing out ancient gardens, the tunnels, when experts say none existed. So, was she a really good guesser? Or was she really remembering a past life? Skeptics have mentioned a psychological phenomenon called cryptomnesia. The theory goes that because she spent decades obsessively reading and studying Egyptology, her subconscious retained highly specific architectural and historic facts. Her brain just released that information as visions. Either way, Dorothy Eady's knowledge and passion changed Egyptology forever.